Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Paul. So I wanted to make a quick follow-up video to my last video going over the fact that I was going to mod up my new to me 1957 reissue Epiphone SJ-200. So starting off, of course, when I made that last video, I think I had only owned this guitar for about a day. Now that I've owned it for quite a few weeks, I gotta say, out of all the guitars I own, currently this really is my go-to acoustic. Playability, the neck on it, everything, the sound, ever since I switched out those factory Gibson strings for something a little bit better, it's just amazing guitar overall. I really enjoy it, and I gotta say, I can definitely justify the $14.99 they want for it a little bit more than I could in my last video. As we all know, these things come in a matte finish, and I was able to buff this thing out, and actually really looks nice, and I fully enjoy this guitar so much better now that it shines. I don't know what it is, I just like it better. So I know everybody kind of wants to know how I did it, so let's talk about that. But first, let's talk about how to do it and right and wrong. I mean, again, there's so many different ways of doing this. Whether you talk to an auto body professional that does nothing but detailing, you talk to somebody that does, guitar refinishing, a luthier, and that's all they do for a living. Each one is going to say something different, whether it be a different cream, a different orbital machine, a different buffing pad. It's kind of what you want to go with and what you think is going to be the best. For me, it was what was available. So all I used was just a straight buffing pad with my drill. That's it. If you saw my last video, when I had mentioned that I buffed out the headstock on my Epiphone Casino, and if anybody had watched my Lucy video where I transformed my Gibson Les Paul over, same thing, that Les Paul had a back that was unfinished. Used one of these buffing pads with my drill, came out perfect. Of course, don't stay in one area too long, keep it moving. These are more meant for, just buffing like metal objects and all that. And I'm sure people watching me right now that do this stuff for a living are probably like, oh my God, don't use that. Again, there's so many different ways of doing it. Everybody's going to say something different. But again, for me, this worked out perfect. And I really see no other reason to use anything else. But I did. We'll talk about that in a second. So I figure also too, I have a Harbor Freight next to me. It's kind of just like a cheap hardware store. Of course, I didn't use the polishing bricks that it came with, but just the little tiny buffing wheels. And then as for the polishing cream that I use, or the compound, Meguiar's number 2 fine cut cleaner. This stuff is amazing. I use it on the headlights of my car. All sorts of stuff around the house if I'm trying to buff something out. Little fine detail work on the guitars. And every guitar that I've buffed out so far, I've used this stuff. Also, what I did is after I was done doing the whole guitar that way, I did borrow from a good buddy of mine, one of his orbitals. I think he got it from Chemical Guys. And it worked really well. All I did was I just went over the guitar one final time just to make sure that I got everything perfectly with that Meguiar's stuff. And then after that, I just went over it with a simple polish. I think it was a Chemical Guys polish as well. So that's about it for buffing it. I mean, if you guys have any questions for me about any of it or how I did it or any more of the process, feel free, comment below, send me an email, follow me on Instagram if you want to see more of it. But that's about it. I figured I covered that right out of the way. And then now let's just talk about some of the mods I did. I mean, basically it was just going to be 2 I did past buffing it. So, of course, I did the Grover tuners, just like what George Harrison had. Personally, I like those Clusion-style tuners better. Even when I first got this guitar, I had thought George had the Clusion tuners, and I was kind of set on getting the double ring ones. And when I realized that he had the Grovers, I want to say also special thanks to Dom Rossi and Grant Gerlach for helping me out with that. But when I had realized that they had Grover tuners, I was a little thrown off. I was like, oh, really? So, of course, I had to grab a drill, widen out the holes. And as you can see, probably the picture I have up on the screen right now, the keys, they still have, leftover holes now at the top. Yeah, I could fill those in, probably put a little touch-up paint, probably wouldn't be much notice. But I don't know, it doesn't really bother me too much, so I figured I'd just leave it alone for now. And then, of course, last thing, truss rod cover. I got the custom one, just like what George Harrison had. All the vintage stuff was primarily 2-screw, if it was Epiphone. Of course, Gibson is all 2-screw as well. But most of the Epiphone stuff, Reissue especially, is all 3-screw. So, of course, where the truss rod goes, you have that empty spot, so that bottom screw doesn't really have anything to tie into. On my Epiphone Casinos, when I did this mod with the elongated E, all I used was a little dab of super glue to hold the screw there. I forgot who it was. They had told me to use a pencil, the eraser at the end, pull that off, and that's what I did for this. Worked out perfect. But past that, this guitar is done. And I gotta say, guys, I really do enjoy it. It's a beautiful guitar, and as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, and I won't talk too much more, I enjoy it. And I do definitely recommend, if you're looking for something that's not a Gibson, but something a little bit better than the standard Epiphone SJs or J200s, whatever they are, this is it. This really is nice. I'm completely impressed by this guitar. Ever since I buffed it out and did these fine touches to it, I could just stare at this thing on the guitar stand all day long. So again, any questions, drop them below. Love to read your comments. Send me an email. Check out my Instagram. Catch you guys on the next video.